This is Midwest Moxie, a show about our region's visionary entrepreneurs and the experiences that shape them. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher, Executive Director of Five Lakes Institute. Cale Johnston knew what startup success looked like. ClickSwitch, his first company, had a software platform that simplified the process of moving consumer accounts from one financial institution to another. It grew to more than 100 employees and was acquired in 2021 by a publicly traded company. So when the time came to launch a second startup, Cale knew just what to do. He'd made it easier to move consumer accounts. Now he'd do it with business accounts. In July 2025, Cale founded Minneapolis-based Onsetto, which he believes will be even more successful than ClickSwitch. Cale, welcome to Midwest Moxie.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's start with ClickSwitch. You'd been working in sales at another Minneapolis financial technology or fintech startup and heard your customers grumbling about how difficult it was to get people to switch banks. Why was it so difficult?
Yeah, I think there was just a fundamental issue when it came to actually onboarding the customer and trying to get them switched over. Account opening has become easier, so consumers can open accounts very easy now in just a matter of minutes. But there's still just a fundamental error when trying to get the customer switched over. And that was more surrounding getting their direct deposit set up and pointed to the new account. And then all the recurring payments that were set up and being pulled out of their old account, how do you easily get those set up and switched to be pulled out of their new account? And so we noticed banks were just buying more technology than ever, but there was still just this fundamental issue of trying to get the consumer switched. So the banks were sitting on more stagnant accounts than ever, meaning the customer opened the account but didn't get switched. So we were really right time, right place to come in and try and solve just a fundamental issue that was happening within the banking space.
Yeah, this was like 2013, so a lot of this stuff was new. I mean, the company you worked for to begin with, the startup, was all about taking images of your check with your phone, which that's pretty standard now, right?
I know. We were doing mobile deposit. So I was my first job out of college, I was tasked with doing go-to-market for mobile deposit, take a picture of your check. And I remember calling banks and they just thought I was crazy. Like, what do you mean? Somebody taking a picture of their check with their phone? And then finally, we sold it to US Bank. This was years in the works, trying to get a big bank to adopt this technology. And then US Bank put out a commercial of somebody, brushing their teeth and taking a picture of their check and depositing it from their bathroom. And then the whole product just took off. And now I'm sure you use mobile deposit, everybody uses it. But yeah, this was 2009, 2010. If you worked at a bank, you thought it was crazy to think somebody could deposit their check via their smartphone.
Well, you kind of alluded to something when you talked about that advertisement with the brushing the teeth and depositing the check. ClickSwitch had this magical marketing advantage, and one that I'm guessing you're thinking will work with Onsetto, which we'll get to, where your customers actually do some of the marketing for you. Did that happen with ClickSwitch?
Yeah, so we would, if we went down to Florida and signed our first bank, let's say down in the Orlando market, we would want that bank to use it as a competitive differentiator to other banks in that market. So we would partner with the marketing team at the bank we just signed, and they would put out radio ads or billboards saying they're the easiest bank to switch to. And then that would drive in their competitors who now are at a disadvantage to say, we need ClickSwitch now as well. So we actually scaled that to over 600 financial institutions were using ClickSwitch in all 50 states by the time we were actually acquired. And when we go into a new market, we would try to give them marketing credits and marketing help to differentiate themselves, because we knew naturally it was going to lead to their competitors filling out lead forms on our website who now needed the product as well.
You make it sound easy, but it couldn't have been. And it's interesting to me, you were a kinesiology major in college. How did you figure out how to do all this and start this company and get all these processes in place and this complicated software?
Yeah, I'm not an engineer, but I've always been interested to figure out how things work. How do you make it work? And we have to solve this problem. And it always felt like every problem could be solved. And, switching the bank account was, it's never been done. We pioneered that space for consumer account switching, and it was complicated. Like, I remember when, we sold it to our first credit union, and, when you sell it to your first credit union, no bank wants to be like, they don't want to be known as or thought of, we're the first customer to ever use this product. Because what
Yeah.
happens if their member, their customer has a bad experience when they go through it? That reflects poorly on the bank. I still remember when the first switch actually ran through our system, and there was high fives and this moment of, we got our first customer using our product. And then everybody kind of looked around at each other like, oh crap, now what do we do? There was like this, okay, we got to figure out. And this was a unique merchant that came through, or a unique employer that came through that we've never seen before. So every time a consumer switched their bank account and ran through our system, our product just became smarter and smarter and smarter, which continued to allow us to scale. But the early days, I think you just have to be so resilient and figure out, like, there's always a path through, but you have to be resilient, and you have to keep going. But like the product stuff and the engineering things that I've learned along the way have helped me become more of a builder, I think, as we move forward. But yeah, the kinesiology major starting a fintech company, I wouldn't have forecasted that when I was, in my early 20s.
Well said. Speaking of, oh crap, what do we do now? You were 33 years old and you sold ClickSwitch to Q2 Holdings, a publicly traded company that still employs a good portion of your former workforce. You sold it for an undisclosed price, so I guess I'm not going to get that out of you. But after putting so much into that startup and building it for, 8 years, what was that like? What did you do?
At the time I sold it, I was ready to sell it. I think, it was a really long journey, and it just consumed my entire life. Like, I had, 3 kids, and I was constantly gone, and you're constantly building this company, and your identity becomes the company. And I always thought I would just feel this huge sigh of relief when I went to sell the company. And it was, I remember April 1st of 2021, all of our kind of passive shareholders, we, sent them a notice as, as of today, we were acquired. And, I remember a lot of them thought it was an April Fool's joke, right? Because it was April 1st of 2021. But as the 24-hour rule went, and I remember just feeling like this, kind of like, what's my identity now? And like, there was a little bit of founder's guilt to sell the company.
Your employees all got different bosses, right?
Yeah. It's quick. Like, when a company acquires you and they decide they want to consume you completely, I mean, they have new roles, new people they're reporting to. Your emails change. Everything's different. And I thought I was ready for it, but I think as time went by a little bit, I felt this huge kind of sense of like, what's my purpose? What's my fulfillment going to be moving forward? And you really have to reinvent yourself, because for 8 years you create this identity as this entrepreneur, as this founder, as this CEO of high growth tech company, and then it's gone. It's really gone overnight. And then how do you reinvent yourself? I spent a lot of time just trying to do soul searching on what to do next.
It took you a while to think about starting a new company.
And I didn't think I was going to do it. The margin for success is so razor thin. Even when you're growing like crazy and you're having the success, you could still go belly up. Rules and regulations, there's things that change. So actually getting it to an exit and getting it to a point where somebody wants to buy it is so rare, that event actually happens. And I knew the rarity that actually occurred. So I didn't think I was ever going to do it again. But I think it's just something like instinctively, like it's inside of me to want to build and to want to do this. And so as time passed, I think time heals all wounds. And here we are gearing up for round 2, which I'm fully ready to do again.
How'd your wife feel about that?
She's really supportive. I think, for 2 years after we sold the company, we took the kids to school every day and we drove them home every day. And, it was great for a little bit. Then after the bickering that happens in the back seat, and it's just like, okay, I gotta start doing something again. But I would look at everything as a business, and I would, you drive past things, you see like land for sale, and I'd be like, well, what if we bought this and put this there? And she's like, you're not that, you need to go back, and I think it's time for you to start another company.
She was with you.
Yeah, she was with me.
Does Onsetto, you just started it in July of 2025. Does it have any customers yet?
Yeah, we have some early movers. We actually built it with a few pilot banks that understood the need to commercial account switching. So if you're a small business and you said, hey, I'm sick of my old bank, I want a new banking relationship, it takes that small business 90 days up to a year to fully get switched over. When you think of all the customers that they have that need to understand that they need to pay into the new account, all the payments they're making that need to get pulled out of their new account, it's a very long process. And we're shooting to build a product that can switch small businesses in a matter of minutes. Taking a 90-day to a year process and condensing it down to minutes, which our pilot banks see a lot of value in that. And now we got to go to market, we got to scale this, and we got to land and expand as fast as possible and get as many banks using this solution as possible. That's kind of what our new focus is all around go to market right now.
I love I don't know if it was strategy to begin with, but based on what you just said, you obviously couldn't have started with businesses. Consumers, in retrospect, are easier to switch than businesses. Did you think about that to begin with, or also?
I didn't. And when we had ClickSwitch, we were strictly consumer account switching, but we would have banks say, hey, does it do commercial? And the answer was no. And the answer was no for a variety of reasons. But the number one reason is I knew it was just it's just way more complicated. When you're switching a consumer account, it's one individual. You update their direct deposit to hit the new account. You switch their auto pays. When you're switching a commercial account, could be multiple people at the business involved. You have the CEO, the CFO, the CFO, accounting. They're all involved with this switch because they all have a piece, whether you're doing AR, AP, or bookkeeping or payroll. So this is more of an enterprise type solution where we understand there's multiple people at this business involved to facilitate the switch.
It must be comforting to your pilot banks that you've done it before. You raised money before with ClickSwitch. Are you doing anything different in terms of raising money with Onsetto?
We will go through the process of raising money. I think strategically this time around, I think with ClickSwitch, I was just very young when we started it, and I was a first-time founder, and it took us a long time to be able to raise money because you're a first-time founder in fintech. You have no background in this, and I think VCs were more resistant to write the check. And then when we had, a couple $1 million in revenues, then it made it easier to write that check. But I wish I was more patient and strategic about who we were getting money from. I think as founders, you do have a tendency to want to get money from whoever will give you the money or whoever's interested in giving you the money. But I think if there's one VC that's interested in writing the check, I think there's multiple VCs who would be interested. And so being more strategic about who you're taking money from, because these individuals are going to be on your cap table. They're going to be in your board meetings. They're going to be either your biggest supporters or they're going to question you the most. And I think at the time when I was ready to sell ClickSwitch, I kind of looked around the room and I didn't want to be in business with these people anymore. And so that allowed, founder fatigue to set in. And that's when it was like, I was ready to sell the company. So knowing what I know now, I think it's just really critical when you start your company that you're going into business with the right people you want to be in business with in longevity, and they won't wear you out. They won't question you. They're going to be supportive of everything you want to accomplish.
You think Onsetto has even more potential than ClickSwitch? Why?
When we were switching a consumer account, it was one direct deposit, obviously one, payroll cycle type of month. When we're switching a small business or a commercial enterprise type business, it could lead to millions of dollars in deposits for those banks. So I think the stickiness we can build around this product and the amount of volume and deposits we could be driving into banks will lead to a higher type of SaaS revenue model for us because banks will be able to articulate the ROI around using our product a little bit better than maybe they could have with a consumer account. So, and there's so much focus right now around commercial accounts and what happened at Silicon Valley Bank and the run of deposits. And they had all these businesses that overnight were trying to switch accounts and realized how much of a pain it was and trying to do it. I think we're really right time, right place with our new focus around commercial account switching.
I think the region is lucky you decided to do it again. Thanks so much for sharing your story. It was great having you on Midwest Moxie.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You can read more about today's guest by visiting wuwm.com. Don't forget, you can also listen to the show as a podcast if you'd like to take us on the go. Just search for Midwest Moxie, that's MOXIE, wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher. Midwest Moxie was created by executive producer Audrey Nowakowski and me. Today's episode was produced by Audrey Nowakowski and engineered by WUWM's Jason Reevey. Join us next Sunday at 7 p.m. to hear from more visionary Midwestern founders building innovative companies. That's right here on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. Support for Midwest Moxie comes from Microsoft, whose efforts to drive technology development across the Midwest and beyond include its National TechSpark community engagement work, which started in Wisconsin, its role as co-founder of Titletown Tech in Green Bay, and its new AI co-innovation lab at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. More information is available at Microsoft.com. Support also comes from Quarles, a multidisciplinary AM Law 200 firm with approximately 550 attorneys who support large and small businesses, from Fortune 500 companies to startups and entrepreneurs across the country. More at Quarles.com.